The orange plate had not rung in 4 years. It sat at the far end of Ashwood Ridge Canyon, 2,620 meters out, bolted to a red rock shelf above a dry wash. The canyon range at Fort Castle ran long and mean, a straight wind corridor that shifted every quarter hour, sand-colored walls that played tricks on mirage, a morning sun that came in low and hard off the eastern mesa. The plate was painted orange for visibility. It was also the only target on the qualification line that the current class of Marine Scout sniper candidates had not touched in 3 days of shooting. Lance Corporal Eli Marsh had watched them try. He was 20 years old, 2 years in, assigned to the range as a flag runner and brass counter, the lowest-ranked person on the line, there to do what nobody else wanted to do. He had been on Ashwood Ridge long enough to know the canyon's moods, the way the mirage lifted off the third rock shelf by 9 in the morning, the way the wind came through the neck in quarter-hour cycles, the way the light off the eastern mesa played tricks on a shooter's eye at anything past 1,800 meters. He had watched dozens of qualification cycles run through this range. He had never seen the orange plate ring. He watched the candidates work through the close plates, the mid-range targets, the 1,000-meter and 1,600-meter marks. They were good. Some of them were very good, big, trained men who had come through months of pipeline and knew their way around a long gun. And then the range called the Ashwood Plate, and every one of them sent rounds wide or short, fighting the canyon's crosswind at distance, and Gunnery Sergeant Harlow walked the line with that particular look of a man who had expected exactly this. Harlow was the range master. 30 years in, 3 deployments, a chest full of qualifications that he mentioned when it served him. He ran Ashwood Ridge the way a man runs something he believes he owns, and he was not in the habit of being contradicted. The civilian armorer had been there since 0600. Eli had seen her before. She came to the range 3 days a week to service the duty rifles, inspect the bolt carriers, log the round counts. She worked out of a green utility vehicle parked at the Ridge Road, wore a plain khaki shirt and a ball cap, and did her work without speaking unless someone spoke to her first. She was somewhere in her early 30s, compact, with the kind of stillness that didn't read as anything until you'd been around enough people to recognize it as a choice. Eli hadn't thought much about her. Nobody had. She had been standing 40 feet from the firing line, writing in her service log, when she looked up at the candidate's last string of shots and said, without particular emphasis, "Winds shifted left. There's a 6-knot deflection at the canyon neck. They're all sending right." Harlow turned around slowly. The candidates turned with him. "Is that so?" Harlow said. She didn't look up from the log. "The mirage is running. You can see it off the third shelf. Anyone calling center hold at that range is going to miss right by 4 to 6 inches. Has been for the last 20 minutes. The line was very quiet. One of the candidates, a big corporal near the south berm, made a sound in his throat that wasn't quite a laugh. Eli felt the smile before he could stop it. Harlow looked at the distant plate. He looked back at her. He walked to the nearest firing position, picked up the duty rifle, a bolt action .308 with the range 0 from the morning's first string, and carried it to where she stood. He held it out to her. "You know so much about the wind," he said, "go ahead and show us." She looked at the rifle. She looked at the plate. Eli watched her eyes go to the canyon neck, then to the third rock shelf where the mirage ribboned in the morning heat, then to a piece of dry grass at the base of the far wall that was bending gently left. The calculation behind her eyes was not the kind of thing a person does in 4 seconds unless they have done it thousands of times before. She set down the service log. She took the rifle. No one laughed now. She walked to the firing position without hurrying, settled behind the rifle in a way that told anyone who was watching that this was not a new thing for her body to do. Her cheek found the stock with the ease of muscle memory. Her left hand positioned the forestock. Her breathing slowed. Eli found himself counting nothing, watching the way she went absolutely still, not the stillness of a person fighting their nerves, but the stillness of a person who has made peace with what comes next. The canyon was quiet except for the wind off the mesa. She did not fire a preparation round. She did not adjust the scope turrets. She read the wind one more time through the glass and made a single, small correction to her hold, an adjustment so subtle that Eli could not have named what changed. Her right hand found the trigger with the patience of someone who understands that a round sent before the moment is ready is a round wasted. The shot broke clean. 2.5 seconds of flight time, give or take, at that distance. Eli's eyes were on the far end of the canyon. He wasn't sure what he expected. The orange plate rang. The sound came back a beat after, a clear, hard clang that the canyon walls picked up and carried, unmistakable. No one said anything. Harlow stood with his arms at his sides. The big corporal near the south berm had stopped smiling. Eli Marsh stood at the flag station with his mouth open and nothing coming out. Harlow's jaw moved once. Then he said, "Confirm." She cycled the bolt without looking up. The empty case caught the morning light on its way to the gravel. She settled again, same position, same stillness, same unhurried breath. The canyon wind shifted a quarter point at the neck, and Eli could see from where he stood that she felt it, because her hold changed by something less than a millimeter before her finger moved. The plate rang a second time. This time, one of the candidates said something under his breath that was not a joke and was not a laugh. The corporal near the south berm straightened up. Harlow turned to the range table and pulled up the duty tablet that logged qualifications, round counts, and shooter records. He started entering the rifle's serial number. Then, because the rifle's last armorer log would connect to a personnel file, he typed in the name from the equipment binder. The screen populated. Eli could not read it from where he stood. But he could read Harlow's face. The gunnery sergeant was still for a long moment. He read what was on the screen the way a man reads something that revises what he thought he knew. Then he scrolled. His hand, flat on the table, pressed down as if steadying himself. She had set the rifle down on the mat and was picking up her service log from the ground where she'd left it. She was going back to work. "Ma'am," Harlow said. She stopped. She turned. He was looking at the tablet. When he looked up, something in his face had changed, not broken, not ashamed exactly, but recalibrated. The way a good man looks when the ground has shifted under him and he is deciding, in real time, who he intends to be about it. "This says your name is Vane," he said. "Corporal Dara Vane." He looked at the screen again. "It says you qualified scout sniper at 22. Youngest in your class." He paused. "It says you posted a 2,910-meter single-round confirmed record." His voice was level, but it cost him something. "It says your call sign is Stillshot." She said nothing. "It says you were medically separated 5 years ago." He set the tablet down. "And it says you've been servicing our rifles for 8 months." She looked at the canyon. She looked at the orange plate at the far end that had not rung in 4 years and had rung twice this morning. When she turned back, her face held the same composure it had held when she picked up the rifle, when she took the dare, when she put 2 rounds into a target 2/3 of the candidate's class hadn't touched in 3 days of trying. "The wind was reading left," she said. "I mentioned it." Harlow reached down and picked up the rifle from the mat. He turned it in his hands once. Then he set it in the crook of his arm and looked at the line. "Candidates," he said, and his voice had the particular quality of a man who has stopped performing and started meaning it. "On your feet." 16 Marine Scout sniper candidates came up off the firing positions and stood at the edge of the line. Not one of them had been ordered to stand at attention. Not one of them was told how to do it. They just rose, and they faced her, and they were quiet. The big corporal near the south berm was the first one fully upright. His hands came to his sides and he looked at her with the expression of a man who has just seen something he will describe for the rest of his life. Eli Marsh was last. He was still at the flag station when he realized what was happening, and then he was standing too, though he could not have said exactly when his legs decided to do it. He was 20 years old and had been on this range for 2 years and had laughed 15 minutes ago at a woman who hadn't done anything yet, and he understood now, in the specific, irreversible way you understand something you cannot take back, that he hadn't known what he was looking at. The sound of boots on gravel came from the ridge road above. Lieutenant Colonel Ashmore had been watching from the observation platform at the top of the canyon. He had a spotting scope up there on dry fire days, and he had been using it for the last hour. He came down the switchback path to the firing line without hurrying, the way senior officers move when they have already made up their minds about something, and he walked to where Gunnery Sergeant Harlow was standing with the tablet in his hand. Harlow handed him the tablet without a word. The battalion commander read it. He scrolled the way Harlow had scrolled. Then he handed it back and looked at Dara Vane. "Stillshot," he said. She stood easy. sir." He reached to his collar and unpinned the crossed rifle's badge, the scout sniper insignia he'd worn since his own qualification 30 years prior. He turned it over once in his palm, the way a man handles something he has carried long enough to know its weight in the dark. Then he walked to her and pinned it to the breast pocket of her khaki shirt with the care of a person returning something to where it belongs, and it caught the morning sun and held. "You've been fixing our rifles for 8 months," he said. "Yes, sir." "You corrected my range master's wind call." "The Mirage was reading clear, sir." He would have seen it. Ashmore looked at the distant plate. He looked at her. 2910, he said. Single round confirmed. 22 years old, she said. Long time ago. Not so long. He stepped back. He brought his hand up to the brim of his cover, slow and deliberate, and he held the salute. On the line, Harlow's hand came up. The 16 candidates followed, a half-beat behind, some of them with their chins high and some of them with their eyes a little too bright for grown men standing in the morning sun. She returned the salute the way she had done everything else, without theater, without a word more than was needed, with the composure of a person who does not require the moment to be larger than it already is. When it was done, she picked up her service log. She walked back to the green utility vehicle at the Ridge Road. She opened the tailgate and began laying out the cleaning kit for the afternoon's work. Eli Marsh stood at the flag station for a long time after the line had broken and the candidates had moved off and Harlow had gone back to the range table to log the qualification cycle. He stood and he looked at the far end of the canyon, at the orange plate that was still swinging faintly from the second impact, catching the light as it settled. He was trying to understand what he'd been looking at for 2 years. The woman who came on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Who checked the bolts and logged the round counts and never said a word unless there was something worth saying. Who had walked into this range morning after morning with a sealed record in a file nobody pulled and a pair of hands that remembered everything they'd ever been taught, and who had waited, not with bitterness, not with impatience, just waited, for the day the wind would shift and someone would hand her a rifle and tell her to prove it. She had proven it in 1 round. He thought about that for a long time. Then he bent down and picked up the 2 empty cases from the gravel where they had landed, and he put them in his shirt pocket, and he kept them there. Some things you carry so you don't forget what you almost dismissed.